we got a lot to do. We got a lot to do. All right, one thing at a time. Okay, cool. So we're going to talk Titan, and then we're going to get into first time ever lightning talks, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be coming at you fast and furious here for the next hour. But first, just want to say a quick message about Titan. Obviously, you all know Titan. We have several of their employees speaking here today. They do technical advising, embedded developers to enhance your team if you need additional hands for a big project or something like that. You know, if you're not aware, the technical co-founder literally wrote the book on Laravel for O'Reilly, and they're just great pillars of the community, really involved in growing the community, diversifying the community, and just all around great people, just a really positive force in Laravel. So we really appreciate them being sponsors. I did just want to touch on a couple of the projects that you might be aware of, or maybe you're not. onramp.dev, something for new developers, just even new to software development at all, or new to Laravel. They run the Laravel scholarship program for us, where we bring in people to Laracon, or Laracon scholarships, I should say, from underrepresented groups. Plus, they have a whole bunch of open source stuff, Jigsaw, which you might have used, and a bunch of packages, which I won't go through all of them. This is just a sampling. So definitely check them out over on GitHub for their open source work, and titan.co for, you know, if you need any of their services or just see what they have going on. They're a really good group. So check out Titan. Okay, here we go. The first ever lightning talk at Laracon Online. Let's find, there we go. Zoom really wants you to bring the wrong person in. It's like, it's always moving around the list on you. I haven't done it yet, but one of these days it's going to happen, and some random person's going to be in here. Just wait for Susanna to get her video going here. There she is.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. You ready?
Well, not really, but let's do it anyway.
All right, you're first up, so take it away.
Thank you. Right, let's see if this screen sharing works.
Yep, I can see it.
Right, can you see mine? Do you see my slides or my notes?
Yep, you're perfect. Slides are good.
Cool. Right, hello everyone, and welcome to my Learning in Public talk, and why it can be great for your career. So, hi, I'm Susanna, and I'm a programmer at Titan, and I'm a founder of Laravel. It's the community for women, non-binary, and trans Laravel developers. I'm a huge proponent of learning in public. We are all individuals, and we all know different things, and we should share them. No matter how little we have learned, how little you think you know, let's talk about it. There is no shame in admitting that we don't know everything, that we are learning. In fact, it's a superpower. Sorry. When I started learning web development, I actually started on Facebook, and it was great. We were all in different stages of learning, and not only the newer newbies learn from the more advanced newbies, you could also see that, yes, it was possible to learn to code. You don't have to be genius to do it, and you don't have to be in your 20s either. Just keep at it, keep sharing your journey, and keep talking to people. My story is not unique. It's the story of you and me, of people who learn in public. It may not have been Facebook for you, but then we have Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, various blogging platforms, newsletters, the ones that you send and the ones that you receive. It may have been meetups, conferences, various Slack channels. Everywhere you go, you'll find people learning in public, asking questions, answering questions. Be one of them. It's going to accelerate your learning. You will meet like-minded people. You will make new connections, new friends, maybe even business partners. It led me to building Laravels. This all sounds great, but learning in public is scary though. I mean, you put yourself out there, vulnerable, openly admitting to your lack of knowledge in a world where everyone is an expert on something. These are the results of a quick Google search. The bride kidnapping expert is a real thing, and apparently the PHP expert too. But I'm not an expert. You don't know who's going to see your video, read your tweet, or your blog. You don't know if anyone will find it interesting or useful. Well, let me just bring this point back for a moment. Did you say you have nothing useful to share? But seriously, you start doubting yourself. What if everyone already knows this? What if people think I'm dumb? What if people judge me? What if it affects my future career and I won't get hired because I asked a stupid question online once or twice? These are the questions that go through my mind every single time. But it doesn't matter. You should ask the question or share this thing you've just learned anyway. But why? Why go through the risk, the discomfort? You know, there's going to be this one person that makes a mean remark or laughs at you, rolls their eyes, or gives you a funny look. Why add even more stress to your lives when there's plenty of it already? Because it can turn your life around. Really. I've been learning in public my whole dev career. And guess what? I've recently landed my dream job. Shout out to Titan. And I dare to believe that it's partly because I've been open about my learning journey. I didn't learn behind closed doors. I didn't only post or tweet when I was 100% sure my knowledge was up there, you know, with the experts. And it couldn't be disputed. Because if I did, I would never have streamed or tweeted, went for this job, or prepared a Laracon talk. I mean, hello, Laracon. But people hire people. By putting yourself out there, people will get to know you. You'll be known as someone who is always learning, not afraid of new things, new challenges. Moving forward and sharing what they have learned, empowering others. Do you know what the most successful people have in common? They never stop learning. They share knowledge, they read books, they write books. So whether it's coding, woodworking, knitting, or learning about the presidential pets, do it in public. You never know when where your next inspiration, your next big break is going to come from. It might just be from someone who has followed you online, read about your learning journey, about your struggles and your wins. Benefit from the knowledge of others, benefit others. No one has ever got where they did without the help of others. No one is truly self-taught, no matter what they say. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. Pay it forward. Teach what you have learned. No matter how little you think it may be, there is always someone who knows less than you. And sometimes even the people you professionally look up to will admit that they didn't know this thing, and they will thank you for sharing. We are all imposters, or at least we feel like one some of the time, yet it feels so lonely, right? I mean, it feels like no one else feels the way I do. I have no business doing what I'm doing. I have no business sharing my knowledge. I know nothing. But by admitting that, hey, I'm just learning, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel like a complete fraud, but you know what? I'm going to share it anyway. We validate the feelings of others because deep down, we are all the same. We crave human connection, and by sharing our journey, we create it. And when that happens, magic happens too. Whenever I share something I've learned, Our overcoming the fear and self-doubt, rewording the tweet like 10 times, and closing my eyes when I click that send button, the community comes and holds me up, supports me, encourages me, shares more knowledge and shares more tips. And it's wonderful to see. What started with one tweet often developed into a long thread full of advice, kindness, and dare I say, love. I feel heard and I feel understood. I feel like I'm part of the community. And the feeling of belonging is crucial for our happiness, for our mental and physical health. There are studies, really, look them up. There is so much positivity that comes out of this experience of learning in public. The story of struggle, our vulnerability can truly be life-changing for you and for others. Brené Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. She also says that this is what we look for in others. This is the first thing we look for in others, because this is how we relate to each other. Yet it's the last thing that we want to expose ourselves, because it feels like a weakness. A weakness. Let it sink in a little. We want others to be open about their learning struggles, because it makes us feel better about ourselves. But we want to hide ours? The magic happens outside of your comfort zone. And we all know that, really. It's just so hard to push ourselves out there. But when it comes to learning in public, there really aren't any downsides. I mean, what could go wrong? You make a fool of yourself? Nah. Chances are someone somewhere will thank you because you just answered their question, or you've inspired them to share their learning too. So do it. Learn, build, share, inspire. Come out of your comfort zone. I'll see you there. Thank you for listening. Also, follow me on Twitter and follow Laravel too. And finally, let's not forget the references. Any book by Brené Brown is great and really eye-opening. And The Sketch of Three People Not Knowing What They Are Doing is from the book by Katie Kirby, The Reluctant Adult. And I would recommend this book to everyone because it's just so true and so funny. And if you enjoyed all the other sketches on the slides, these were done by the wonderful Nohemi from Titan. Thank you, Nohemi. Thank you. And that's it from me.
Great, amazing job.
Thank you.
Pulled it off beautifully.
Wow, can't believe it's done.
Thank you. Thank you so much for going first. That's a hard job.
I know. Well, I hope
great.
you all enjoyed the rest of the lightning talks and the rest of the conference. And it's been a great day for me. Really
Awesome.
great one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. See now. Get everybody's art in here. Okay, do that. Okay, we're bringing up Shruti. 1 second. She is.
Hey, Jan.
Hey.
Hey, am I audible?
You are. Looks like you're all set.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Right.
Okay, I can see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Shruti Balasa. I'm from India. And this is my first Laracon, even as an attendee and as a speaker. So that's quite funny. And today I'll be talking to you about grid layouts made easy with Tailwind CSS. Now, a lot of you might already know grid using pure CSS, but there are many who learn Flex first and they feel everything can be done with Flex. So why learn grid? Because the moment you look at the syntax and all of that, there's so much you can do with grid that you feel, okay, this is too overwhelming for me. So I actually started learning grid layouts the grid concepts through Tailwind CSS, so I didn't feel overwhelmed. And for the next 10 or hopefully 15 minutes, I'm going to be showing you how simple it is to create a lot of those commonly used layouts using Tailwind CSS. So let's start. So the first one, the first set of layouts that you're going to see almost everywhere is these kind of equal width columns. This is your Amazon. So there are 2 rows, there are multiple rows, and all the columns are equal width. The same thing on Instagram and same on YouTube as well. You will see this almost on every single website of, at least 3 or 4 equal width columns, right? And on mobile screens, they just become one below the other. So one single column. Now, let me show you how to create this blog post display that you're seeing right here. Let me go to the demo first and show you that it's responsive as well. So this is what it is on desktop. And then on smaller screens, maybe a tablet, portrait mode, something, you see that it becomes 2 columns and all of it is fully stretched. So you don't see any space around. And then this is one single column on mobile, right? So to do this, let me open up the starting part of it. That is, I just have these blocks ready. So I'm not using any grid here. So if you just look at it, so you see this is what it is throughout. So this is following the normal flow. Now, let's say because Tailwind follows mobile first approach, I will be starting mobile first as well. So in the first thing you need to do for grid is add a grid class to the parent element. Since this is our parent element, these are the child elements. Let's add grid. It does nothing. It just sets the display to grid. And then what you do is you set the number of columns using grid calls 1. So you see, you can actually divide the page into these many, or the container into these many equal sized columns. So that's what it does by default. It divides into those many equal width columns. So I say grid calls 1, and then I say, again, this does nothing because this is the default flow. So let's add some gap between these 2 cards. For that, you can use the gap utility classes, right? So there are a lot of options like these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. So if I use gap 6, it adds both horizontal and vertical spacing. You can't see the horizontal one yet, but you'll see in a while. Just in case you need only horizontal spacing, you can say gap X 6 or whatever. If you need only vertical, you can use the gap Y. But if you need both, usually you would need both, you just use gap, right? So now you see the spacing here. Let's slowly go to the SM breakpoint, maybe somewhere here. That is a slightly bigger screen. You add this SM colon. So above that breakpoint, you will see this, and we want 2 columns here. So let me say grid calls 2. Right, so immediately you see everything fitting into place. Great. So let's next go on to MD breakpoint, medium. I say grid calls 3, and that's it. This is the demo we saw. Of course, we saw 6 items. So if you want to see 6 items, let me just add them here, and that's what it is. So you see both horizontal and vertical padding of the same amount. You can add different horizontal and vertical padding if needed. Great, let's go to the next demo. All right, so we saw equal width columns. What about something like this, which is unequal? Now with Tailwind, to an extent, you can do this, especially when the bigger column is, let's say, twice or thrice the width of the small column. So you remember using tables where you span a column, you span a cell into 2 columns, or you span a cell into 2 rows. That's exactly how this works as well. So this is the demo here. Yeah, so this is what it is on desktop. But let's say on smaller screens, this is the same width as the free plan. But did you also notice something else? Here on desktop, we had the pro plan come second, free plan come first. But on smaller screens, we have the Pro plan coming first. So the order changed. We'll also see how to do that. So this is the starting point again. I'm not using grid. I just have 2 cards. And again, starting from the mobile layout, since we had the Pro plan first, let me in the markup also add it first, okay, because we're going mobile first. And then, like I said in the previous example, let's add grid class and then grid calls 1 and then the same thing gap 6. So this sets the mobile layout. And then for, let's say, MD breakpoint, I'll say grid, not 2, not grid calls 2. If you do grid calls 2, this is what happens. You get 2 equal sized. But we just saw that this was spanning across 2 columns, right? So let's do grid calls 3 instead and somehow make this stretch until here, right? So for that, add MD breakpoint here as well and use the utility classes call span 2. Right, so you're spanning across column, right? Not the row. So use call span 2, and there we have it. Now the only thing left to do is change the order, for which again you have the order utility classes. So you can say order 1 actually here, because the default is order 0. Order 1 works, but if you somehow want to be more sure, you can add order last here or something else, maybe add 2 here, add 1 here, and make sure. But order is a utility class that you can use. Great, this is about our second demo. Let's go to the next one. Yes, so based on the same principle, you can recreate the whole Bootstrap grid system if you're familiar with Bootstrap, and if you missed that in Tailwind, where you can simply say call 4 and then call 8. You have, the width, 4 times width here and 8 times width here. If you miss that in Bootstrap, don't worry. Something like this can be totally easily created using Tailwind. So let me show that to you. Now we just have 1 column here. Let me recreate that demo. So we have span 3, 4, no, sorry, what? Yeah, 3, 4, and 5, right? So it needs to add up to 12 for some reason. Yeah. So now for this to happen again, just add I'm using some custom styles here, just in case you wondered how this became green, using some custom styles here. So let's set the parent to grid and then say grid calls 12. If you want to use the Bootstrap column thing, you need to set it to calls 12, and you might have already guessed. So just make this call span 3, then call span 4, and call span 5, right? So you're able to see this. I have not done the responsive part here, but you get the idea, right? Now, in case if we add some height here, like H80 or something, you'll also see it stretching across the entire height. So that's about the third example. Now, what if we want to create something a little more complex? Now, this is something I've taken from frontendmentor.io. It has wonderful challenges, and this is a good way to practice grid. And though it looks a little complex at the beginning, it's actually very simple. Based on the previous things we discussed, now how many columns do you see here? You see 1, you see 2, 3, and 4, and then you see 2 rows, right? Let's look at the demo again. Here's the demo. On the desktop, this is how it is. Of course, ignore all the text there, just for display. And on mobile, it's in this particular order. So what I've done is, again, I have kept this ready because this is a lightning talk. I have to be fast. It's in that same order. I haven't added any grid classes. So let's do the same thing. Add grid and grid calls 1 again for mobile. And then a gap of 6 again. Then when you go to the MD screen, right? So by here, we do, grid calls 4, because we saw 4 columns. And now the first one spans across 2 columns. That's what we saw. So here at MD breakpoint, this is the first one, the purple one. I'll say call span 2, and this is done. This is also done. This was where it was. If you want to look at the demo, where's that? Yeah. So the second one is where it is supposed to be, but what about the third one? Now, the third one is actually this long div, which is supposed to be here. The one that comes the last is actually supposed to be here. Now, how do we make this appear there? For that, you need to understand something called as grid lines, okay? So here there are invisible tracks actually running through the whole grid. So if you see columns, this is column line 1, or it's called column track 1 maybe. So this is 1. It doesn't start at 0, it starts at 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and ending at 5. And when it comes to row tracks, it starts at 1 again, 1, 2, and 3 at the end, right? And now we can make this item start at row track 1 and column track 4. To do that, this is the last div, right? So at MD breakpoint, I say row start 1. So that's the utility class. Now you might see things jumping around. Now this started coming at the beginning, right? We don't want that. We want it to start at call 4. So the same way you can say call start 4, and that shifts there. But we saw something else happen. All of this expanded. That's not what we need. We need this to span 2 rows now. I hope you're following. So if you look at it, yeah, we just need this to be half the width of the last div, right? For that, we can again do MD, this time not call span, but we do row span 2. That's it. We are almost done. The final thing pending is to make this span 2 columns. So that's the 4th one, I believe. Yes. So we have MD call span 2. Yeah. So you have this ready. All of these demos are available in the presentation. I'll tell you how to access that PPT at the end. Now let's go back to the next one. So yes, now let's look at some utility classes that are used for alignment. If you're familiar with Flex, you know that there's justify content, align items, and so on. Something similar exists for grid as well. So for that, let's just a moment. I can't see my cursor every now and then. I don't know what happens. Yeah, it's right here. No, sorry. Okay, I might have to exit full screen. Okay, so let's look at this. There are 4 cards here that have no width and no height. Just give me a moment. I'm still not able to see my cursor. This should be better. Yeah. So now I'm sorry about this. So now we have 4 of these cards, no grid yet. So let me just create a grid with grid calls 2. Okay. So this is what we see by default. Like I said, it stretches across the entire width and the height. Since we're using min height screen, it stretches across the full screen as well, apart from the padding, right? But we can change this. And that can be done. So let's say you want to control the horizontal spacing. You don't want it to stretch full width. You can use justify items start. Let me move this into the next line. So you can say justify items start, or you can say justify items end. You see what's happening, right? So this is start, this is end, this is center. So these are horizontal alignments, and this is stretch. Okay, so let me keep this at center for now, but the default is stretch. Let me add some width here so you can see some differences. Sorry, 32 is good. So you see, this doesn't change. If we have a fixed width, then that doesn't get altered. Since these don't have fixed widths, they're able to move around, right? And now this was about horizontal alignment. How about vertical? Now for vertical, it's just items center. So there's no align item center. You can see that as the CSS property, but you can use items center, items end, item start, and then baseline. Now you saw that baseline is different from start, right? This font, that's why I've increased this font. The base of this font aligns, this text aligns with this text. That's what baseline does. And then stretch is the default. So let's put it back to item center. This was about the horizontal and vertical alignment. Now you can combine both of this. So if you are centering both anyway, that is horizontally and vertically, you can use the place items utility class, and you can either place items both horizontally and vertically at the start, at the end, at the center, or stretch, right? So let me set it at center. So going by the same thing, you can center a div in the page, which is like, supposed to be the most complex, concept, right? Centering something within a container. So here it's very easy. Just add a grid, and let me show that to you. So let's look at this. So simply add grid, and then you need to add a height first. So let's add a min height screen. If you don't add that, it will not vertically center. You have to add some height at least, but because we want to center this within the page, we add min height screen. And then, like I just showed you, you have to do place items center. And ta-da, this is at the center of the screen, no matter how much you resize the window, right? That's about centering it. And that was my next slide as well. So you have the demo link here. Then, yes, so this covers most of the, at least I think 60 to 70% of the utility classes that Tailwind has. We saw how you could span across two columns, span across two rows, start from a different row, start from a different column, order. We saw how to, the horizontal alignment, vertical alignment. We saw centering a div on all of that. So now let's see a couple of use cases where Tailwind doesn't have utility classes, but it can be customized very easily. You can use the arbitrary values with the JIT mode, the new JIT mode that's there, and very simply create this. So one of the demos is the sticky footer. So, okay. So how do you make this footer stick at the bottom? You might know how to do this using Flex, but with Grid also, it's pretty simple. You can't do that with the existing utility classes that Tailwind has. So let's add Grid here. And then if you say Grid rows 2, because this is actually 2 rows, like we saw before, it just occupies equal height. Both of them occupy equal height. So instead of doing 2, now you see what this property is. It uses grid template rows, and it says repeat 2 times this value. So it's either, so repeat 2 times min content, which is either 0, that is the 0 at the minimum, and 1 fraction at the best. So that's what it's doing. It's occupying 1 fraction each. We don't want that. We want this to grow. In Flex, you use Flex grow, right? So we want this to use the maximum height possible, and we want the footer to occupy just as much space as needed. So remove this 2. Sorry, grid rows 2. Instead of 2, remove that, and within square brackets, you can add any arbitrary values. So you can add 1 fraction, and then in pure CSS, you would probably do a space and auto, but here arbitrary values cannot take in space. Instead, you replace it with a comma, right? So this is your sticky footer right here. If you look at the, yeah, so you see it, this is what we need, right? So you have your footers. This is all you need to do. You don't have to write the complex your CSS thing. I mean, in case you need min content and all of that, you will have to put it within, but you can put in any values here, right? So without adding a new class name and then putting it in your custom CSS, you can do this right away. This has another use case as well, which I can show you. This is the last example. I'm done with this. Yeah. So let's say you want, this demo is done already because I was afraid I wouldn't have the time. So let's say you have some tasks here and some checkboxes here. You again need this checkbox to occupy the least space possible, and you want to give these labels the more space, whatever, the largest space. That's why the same thing we saw, instead of rows, grid calls 1FR and auto, that does the trick. Instead, if you don't do this, if you have grid calls too, this is what happens. We have some ugly spacing here, right? So that's about my talk, I guess. I don't know how much time it was. I didn't look at the clock. I just wanted to give my best here. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. It was like just a short talk. So if you want to see a lot more about grid, there is my YouTube channel, Tyrus, where you can find a 45 minutes video on a few more things that grid can do in Tailwind CSS. So if you like the real world examples that I gave in this demo, instead of just using some colored boxes, which you'll see on most tutorials, you can pre-order my ebook, which has full of such real world examples, almost like 70 or more examples of both Flex and Grid. You'll not find these many examples anywhere else. You can pre-order right now. It's due to release in November, but you can grab it for the lowest price right now. And if you want to learn Tailwind, if you are somebody, a backend dev, and you're not very good at front end, you have very minimal knowledge of CSS, then I have a 4-hour workshop coming up with Full Stack Europe that's happening on October 22nd. So 4 hours complete hands-on. Register for this. They have some limited slots, so you better register soon. That's about it. So follow me on Twitter at Shruti Balsa. You'll find most of the updates there. And the YouTube channel is Tyrus. You can simply search Tyrus. That's the anagram of my name. And you can download this PPT as a PDF at shrutibalasa.com/laracon.pdf. That's it. Thank you so much. And Ian, how long was the talk?
Oh, I didn't track it, but I think you did fine. It was great. Thank you so much. Good stuff. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Yes, thank you. All right, we're moving. Let's see here. Okay. Bring margin. Hello.
Hey, Ian. Hi, everybody.
All right, I can see you, I can hear you, so we're good to go.
Fantastic. I will get started with screen sharing. All right.
Looks good.
Here we are. Hi, everybody. My name is Marge Holmstrom-Sabo. I work at a small place called Titan, and I'm going to be sharing some things with you about using inclusive language. To start, I prefer she, her pronouns. I have a background in communications with experience in programming and engineering. My role at Titan is taking care of people and business operations. You might know me as Minpin on Twitter, and I will occasionally post things about the Laracon community scholarships. That's part of my role at Titan as well. I want to let you know before I begin that this talk is biased toward people who speak English as their first language. There are certain languages around the globe that have gendered nouns and gendered particles and parts of speech. English does not, and English is my native language, so that is my bias. So what did I just do? I introduced myself. And now I'm going to tell you why introductions kind of matter. It establishes identity. Who is this person speaking? Who am I? Here's my name. It establishes credibility. Do I have authority to share information on the subject I'm speaking about? Connection. How might we be connected? What are ways that we might have common ground? And then finally, it's friend or foe. My introduction to you helps you determine, am I someone who is friendly or am I someone who is dangerous? And an introduction is the first way and first tool we have, particularly in online formats, of establishing friendship or enmity. So with that, words matter when meeting. What we do when we use words, we try to demonstrate respect for the other person, an empathetic response, that we're actively listening, that we recognize our differences, and we are on equal footing. So now think in your head, after I've introduced myself to you, what would you say back to me as an introduction? If my words helped you to feel welcome, you might say similar things in response, like, hi, my name is Matt, and I prefer he, his pronouns. I also use Twitter and like welcoming people to the community. So in that example, Matt would have reflected the structure of my introduction. He would have chosen similar words and language and demonstrated to me that he was actively listening and responding with friendship and welcome. But also recognizing that we are different because our pronouns are not the same. At its core, I don't want to read this whole thing. At its core, though, inclusive language really means acknowledging and respecting diversity, people, differences, and equality. So it's helping people to feel like friends and not foes. Commonly used and not inclusive. So this quick slide is just a few words and phrases we've all heard at some point and probably have used at some point. And they are not bad when used in appropriate context. Words themselves are not bad. I don't give value judgments to language, but there are times when certain words and phrases are more or less appropriate. So here we have, hey guys, ladies and gentlemen, master, my dudes. Not everyone who hears these words will identify with those words. They establish hierarchy, they establish dominance, they assume a gender, they assume an audience that may not in fact be accurate. So while there are times where you could use these words on a first meeting or first introduction, it's better to look for words that leave those out. We've got a lot of other options in English because this language is nothing if not full of abundant vocabulary. So new options to try. When you are speaking to a group, here are some things you can try instead. We've got all y'all, meaning you, but all of you, or y'all, which could just mean some of you. Team, humans, friends, folks, supervillains, which I included because there might be a time when you are in a group of supervillains, but it's probably best saved for a gathering of self-identified supervillains or your RPG. We're looking for words here that, again, don't assume a default gender, a specific hierarchy, or assert dominance, but invite everyone to feel welcome and included. So as you're practicing, the things that I wanted to call out to help practice inclusive thought and inclusive actions, share your own pronouns and listen for the pronouns of others. This might seem like a strange or silly thing, but a lot of times in various communities, people are non-binary or trans, and they might not feel comfortable sharing their preferred pronoun and specifying their gender identity. So if you share your pronouns first, that gives a space and creates an opening for them to participate fully as themselves. Again, look out for words that imply a default gender. For a long time, I would hear the word guys and think, this doesn't mean me. And a lot of times people will say, oh, but that means everyone. Like, maybe, but it doesn't mean me. And with that in mind, I try to avoid that phrase when I am not sure. Until you know how someone wants to be addressed, make the call to use neutral language, truly neutral language. Another thing that I've heard in terms of inclusive language is that's not how English is supposed to be used. But language exists and changes to serve the people who use it. Latin is a dead language. English is not. English is a living language that can be modified and will change over time as people continue to use it. And then last point, if you make a mistake, correct yourself quickly and continue. This one can feel very awkward, in particular if you are meeting someone who is non-binary and are not accustomed to using they, them pronouns. However, if you knew them before they came out to you as non-binary and you slip up and say he, don't say, oh no, I'm so sorry, and make a big deal of it, because then you are centering your error and drawing more attention to something that doesn't really need that kind of attention. Just say they and continue. That then honors the person, and it will become easier with practice. So to conclude, this is not about being right or wrong, using correct language at all times. It's about being welcoming, respectful, and demonstrating that you're trustworthy. The words that you choose in everyday conversation, in first meeting, help people feel welcome, safe, and important. What you want to do with inclusive language is help people feel safe as themselves, because when you feel safe, it is easier to work. You are not spending your time wondering, am I safe, and trying to ensure your safety, or establishing or working against that fight, flight, freeze mode. You're spending that time developing stronger relationships with your colleagues and clients and making products that work well for everybody. So references and reading. I will tweet these links later, but these are a good place to start and references that I used in developing this talk. It's a good starting point for if you are not accustomed or have not given a lot of thought to inclusive language. You can go here and learn as an initial starting point, and then also link out to other more in-depth resources. And that's it. I want to thank my colleagues at Titan for their inclusive practices every day and their support in prepping this talk, including Noemi Olvera, who helped with the design. I'd also like to call out and thank everyone who donated a ticket to Laracon to get more folks from the community here. And then finally, thanks to all of you for listening. Go forth and be friendly.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Really great.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks. All right. Have a good rest of the day. Okay, we're still moving. We're moving. Lightning. We're going fast. No time for slowness in the lightning talks. Okay. Find him. He's in here somewhere. It's in here. There he is. Cool.
Hello, Ian.
There he is.
Good
How are ya?
evening. Hey.
Look at that. That's a vibe you have going on there.
Yeah,
Yes.
some good Laracon vibe here. I had to do it. Some underwater jellyfish kind of colors.
Yes.
You know,
We're
I got
matching
it going.
tones.
Yeah, I also have like the Laracon t-shirt here.
He's got the merch. Get the merch.
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about the merch. Go get the merch. There's shirts and cups and whatever.
Okay,
Blankets.
let's start. I'll
right.
share
Take it
my
away.
screen, and I guess
Yep.
that everybody can see it. I'm gonna minimize this little thing. Let's get my screen in order here. So let's press play, and then we are good to go. So hi, everybody. I hope you're having an excellent Laracon. It's a pleasure for me to give a lightning talk. And in this lightning talk, I'll introduce you to something special in testing called snapshot testing. So I am Freek. I'm a developer at Spatie. You'll also find me on Twitter. My handle is Freek Meursen. I have a blog, freek.dev, where I regularly write about Laravel, PHP-related stuff. Most of my time is spent at Spatie, where I create digital products such as Ray and Mail Coach, and I also record digital courses. And I also have a side project called Oh Dear, which is an uptime monitor. And this one doesn't only monitor your homepage, but it will actually crawl your site and send you a notification when any of the pages are down. Now at Spatie, I don't only work on products, but also together with my team on a lot of open source. And together with my team, I've created about 300 open source packages, mostly for PHP and Laravel. They've been downloaded now for 175 million times in total, and they are being downloaded for 9 million times per month. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about snapshot testing. What is snapshot testing? Well, a snapshot, it can sound a little bit like a heavy word, but it's actually something very simple. It is just a file on the disk that we call a snapshot. And you use this in your test. And your test will succeed if the output of your test matches what is written inside of the snapshot. And if it doesn't matches, then it will fail. So if the output of your test doesn't match what is in the snapshot, then the test will fail. You'll see a practical example of this in a bit. Now, where does this come from? We didn't invent this at Spatie. This way of testing has been around for a long time. And it used to be called characterization testing. But this way of testing was popularized by Facebook, who called it snapshot testing. And they have built-in support for this in their testing tool called Jest. And they use it for testing interfaces. So as you might know, Facebook has created React, and React renders to HTML. And they use snapshots to verify if the HTML produced matches what they expect for a certain React component. Now, Jest is a JavaScript test runner. So how can we do this in PHP? Well, we have two packages, one for PHP unit and one for PEST. And both of these packages give you these functions: assert matches snapshot, and we also have JSON and XML variants. Now, these JSON and XML variants, they just produce better diffing when something goes wrong with your test. Functionally, these functions are just the same. They do just the same. Okay, I've talked a lot. Let's just switch to PHP Storm and just take that assert matches snapshot for a spin. So I'm here in one of our packages. It's the Shiki package. And we're in a prepared branch, in the Laracon branch, where I only have one test. In the full package, we have a lot more tests to prove that this works. Now, let's take a look at the test to see what this package actually does. So the name is, it can highlight blade. And we have here some blade code here. And we pass that code to Shiki highlight. And we get highlighted code back. And then we take a look if that highlighted code is equal to this chunk of HTML. And you can see here that we have our blade code here. Here we have that if directive. And you can see that it's surrounded by HTML code, which sets some colors and takes care of some styling. And what you can do with this HTML code is you can put it on your blog or on some documentation pages, and you have a beautifully rendered, highlighted code snippet. So that is what the package does. And this test, it will, of course, it will pass. I've got a little alias here, PF, to quickly run tests for a certain function. So I'm going to filter out all the functions and just run this one. And you can see that it passes. So highlighted code contains this HTML. Now, I like this test because it's pretty simple. But what I don't like is that I have this piece of HTML now sitting in my test. And I think for a couple of lines, I wouldn't worry too much. But imagine that this piece of output was like 50 lines long, and that your test suite was like 20 tests with all 50 lines of HTML. Then your test would become a little bit unmaintainable. So, and this is where snapshots come in. We can just throw all of this away and just replace it by a function, assert matches snapshot. Let me import it as well. And we're going to pass it the highlighted code. And let's run this test now and see what happens. And our PEST test didn't pass, but we get a warning. This test is incomplete. We also get in the output here that a snapshot was created for this test. If I reload the file system here, then we can see that the snapshot directory was created and we have a snapshot file here. And the HTML that was just in my test file is now present here. So that assert message matches snapshot function has written the input to this file. And we didn't get green here because in this first pass, when you add a snapshot, you should verify if this output is correct. And if it is correct, then you can just run it again, and then you'll get green. And this is now a part of your test. You should commit this together with all the rest of your code. So I've cleaned up this test considerably. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we don't have the same output. So I'm going to mimic that a change was made just by concatenating something to the output of Shiki here. So here, a change. And let's run the test again. And now you see that the test failed because what was written inside of the snapshot doesn't match anymore with what Shiki produced. We got a change here, and here we didn't have it. Now, if this was a bug, this is how you catch it. Your test failed. But imagine that this is a welcome change, that this is a change that you actually want to have. You can update your snapshot by passing update snapshots behind the D flag. And let's run this. And you can see here that we have a message here, snapshot updated. We're getting a warning that this is incomplete because now when you update the snapshot, you should verify if everything is correct here. We see that a change has been written in this snapshot. I can run this test again without the flag, and then we get green. And this is basically all there is to snapshot testing. Now, let me switch to the main branch of this package. Then you can see that we actually have a whole lot more snapshots here, and that nearly every test here uses the matches snapshot function. So let's go back to the slides. So it's a lightning talk, so we're already nearly the end. Let's start wrapping things up. What do I think about snapshot test? I think it has many advantages. It is very easy to get started with. You just saw me using it, and yeah, we can just use it right away. And it can also be used to validate complex output, such as a chunk of HTML, which we just used, but you can also use it for writing a test for JSON or XML. I wouldn't necessarily use it for little smallish kind of strings where you can just use regular assertions. I would only use it for like big chunks that I can't validate easily in another way. And another advantage is that you can easily update all the tests in one go. In our demo, I've only updated one snapshot, but if there is output that was changed and it would impact multiple snapshots, you can rewrite all those snapshots in one go. Now, there are also some disadvantages to snapshot testing. Snapshots can be a little bit brittle. If there is an unrelated change to what you're testing out in the code somewhere, and the output doesn't match what is in the snapshot anymore, then your test will break. And maybe for a reason that you don't expect, because yeah, it's a lot of output. If there's one little detail that is changed, it's hard to pinpoint what change did effectively cause a snapshot test to fail. What is also a disadvantage is that you have a risk that you can write a bug into the snapshots. So whenever you write a snapshot, whenever a snapshot is written first, you should verify that snapshot. But if you didn't do that correctly and you saved some wrong output, then it can be confusing for your future self or others touching the test suite of your package or project. So keep these advantages and disadvantages in mind. Here are some interesting links. So you'll find the snapshot packages here. I've used the Shiki PHP package to demonstrate it. This can highlight all kinds of code, not only PHP, but I think 40 or 50 different languages. If you're using it in Laravel, if you want to use this in Laravel, you're probably better off with Laravel Markdown, which uses Shiki under the hood. And if you don't want to take care of locally rendering any highlighted code, take a look at an online service such as torchlight.dev. Now, I have one more thing that I'd like to say, and some of you might know it. Yesterday, we launched a new course called Testing Laravel. And if you like this presentation where I showed you a nice testing method, you're going to love this course. We have 6 hours of video there. You'll learn how to test a Laravel application from scratch. So it's good if you don't know anything about testing yet. But we also share a lot of tips and tricks to sharpen your existing skills, like, for instance, snapshot testing. And we've recorded this entire course twice, once for PEST and once for PHP unit. So no matter which test runner will become the most popular in the future, this course will have got you covered. And especially for Laracon, we have a coupon, Spasi loves Laracon, that will give you a nice 10% discount. So you can write this down, take a screenshot. I'll also tweet out my slides after this talk ends. You can find the code there and the courses at testinglaravel.com. So thank you for listening. I hope you liked it. We've moved at a fast pace because it was a lightning talk, but I hope that this is another nice skill to have under your belt. Enjoy the rest of your Laracon. Thanks. And that's it, Ian.
Great job. Another great job here. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Let's see. We got one more lightning talk. A little behind. It's going to be all right. Okay. Let's grab Alex. Here.
Hello, Laracon.
There he is. Hello.
You can hear and see me?
Oh, I think you're a little light. Turn it up.
Again, a little bit light. Okay, one moment, please.
Maybe you have the wrong source, possibly.
Oh, this could be. Now better? Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. So, I'll just share my screen. The whole desktop. Okay.
Looks good.
Let's do it. Hello, Laracon. My name is Alex Wolf, and I study Intelligent Systems Engineering at the OTH Regensburg in Germany, and I work at DC. It's a company in Germany. Today, I will talk about composite primary keys or composite keys in general and how they can benefit your application. If you have any questions, feel free to write me or add me on Twitter. My handle is @AlexFWolf. So first, I would like to start with an example. Package.go.dev is an online platform where you can view auto-generated code documentation for packages of the programming language Go. Some of you might now be confused, but there's an explanation why I chose this as an example. When working with Go, I really enjoyed the documentation to just have a look at it. And I wanted to make something similar for the PHP ecosystem. The clock is doing its thing. I wanted to do something similar for the PHP ecosystem. Luckily, the software which this was based on is available online, and so I could have a look at the code because I had a question. A package in that case has many versions. So like this package, it's a package I think some of you might have worked with because it allows you to generate CLIs in Go. Has many versions. I mean, you all know it from Laravel, for example. The Laravel package in PHP has many versions. This is only a conceptual overview, and what it explains it well enough. And my question was, how do they maintain data integrity? Because I didn't want to have the package version combination twice. And I found two ways to validate it. One thing was at the application level. So on every update or insert, I checked, is this combination already available? But it was a process that was really error prone, as well, we are developers, we are not perfect, and it's really likely to forget something. So on the application level, it didn't work for me really well, and I saw it just as a supplemental measure. But I also found a way to validate it directly into database, and this is what this will be about. So there's the possibility to define composite primary keys. So in this case here is there's a set of primary keys. It's package path like github.com/cobra/ and the version. So the primary consists of two columns. So let's see some examples. For example, this one, wait, I have to move something. This example here has the package path with a version, and it can be inserted as this combination is not available, not in the database. Another version also works fine. If we add another unrelated package, it can also be inserted. But if we want to insert the same package and the same version in the same combination we previously wanted, we have. Sorry, I'm nervous. It's Laracon. So the same combination we previously added doesn't work, and this is what we wanted, because in that case there's an exception in Laravel, so a query exception. This indicates that it already got an error from the database. But are composite primary keys supported in Laravel? Well, let's look at this example. We've got two columns created, package path and version, and it's also possible to declare in your migration files composite primary keys. But with this migration, it does not work yet, because there's Eloquent. The table lacks the ID column. One workaround would be to add a nullable ID column, but this is a quite hacky approach, and the referencing via a combination is also hard. So to quote from Stack Overflow, what a disgusting hack. But luckily, furthermore, there's also no support in the model out of the box. So you can set the primary key in the model, but it's not possible to set combined primary keys in the model. Luckily, there are also third-party solutions. They normally get integrated as traits, but they are quite outdated and they solve only obvious problems. So some eloquent features like relations are quite unclear if they are supported yet, and they are not maintained by the Laravel team. So as we all know, Laravel is moving with a high pace, and therefore it's hard for package maintainers which do work in such central part of the application can't keep up. But luckily, at least in some database management systems, there are always some ones who do some extra work. Composite primary keys are just unique constraints under the hood. So instead of doing the thing with all the combining strings, we could reference the package ID and the version ID and say that the combination of the package ID and the version ID has to be unique. This has the benefit that Eloquent keeps working fine, as we don't work around some Eloquent features. It is supported out of the box, and we have great flexibility with multiple constraints. And this is also what I would like to show to you, because we only can have one constraint in primary key. We can only have one primary key, as it's called primary key. And I would like to show that as example by the game of Risk. I hope everybody knows this. We have a game. A game has many powers or countries. Like in the game, there are colors like red, green, yellow. And if we would like to make a platform where players can play Risk, a game can have many players, and a player can participate in many games, and a player can, through the game, also play many countries, but not in the same game. And therefore, we could declare one ID, as it's our regular primary key in Laravel, and we have also the 3 other IDs, the user ID, the game ID, and the country ID. And then we can say, well, the combination of the user ID and the game ID has to be unique. So we just want a user to be in only one game. And also, we want to be the combination of the game ID and the country ID to be unique. So that now 2 green countries play in the same game. Yeah, and I'm nearly done right now. I have some further resources which also tackle the issue of performance. There's the talk by Kai Sosnowski, thinks every developer absolutely positively needs to know about database indexing. And also my all-time favorite is Eloquent Performance Patterns by Jonathan Raining. It's really incredible what he did with Eloquent. At the end, I also have a little poll on Twitter, because when I got accepted to Laracon, I went downstairs to my dad and told him, "Hey, dad, look, I got accepted." And he, "Well, what's this?" And he wanted to hear about it, and I explained it to him. And then I also explained to him my topic, and he sat there and went on and explained me the topic and told me, "Well, you have to do this with foreign keys, etc. pp." And I sat there and he looked at me, "Well, I had it in 1990 in my economy studies." Well, he studied economics. And therefore, I just want to know from you, have you ever came across the need for this, and do you work with them? I'm really curious, because I previously had a survey, but only 16 participants, and that was quite not many. I don't know the correct word now. So thank you for your attention, and now back to Ian.
Okay, great job. Thank you, Alex. Good work. All right. Lightning talks done. But we still have 7 talks to go. 7.